extra excited to have them here and talk about their careers and their experiences and what BRED has meant for them. So it's a really special time for all of us. This is also just a highlight of our Price year for those of us in the program, and especially for the women to be able to have a chance to get together. Right now, we have over 140 women studying real estate in our programs, which is just amazing and great. And with those kinds of numbers, as we can see, and as you'll find as you get out and continue to network, our network just gets stronger and stronger. So you get the boost of the Trojan network, regardless, and then that extra level of intimacy and camaraderie by being a woman in real estate. So, and while I am not a USC grad, I really love being part of it, and I think you guys will really benefit from it when you get out. So a couple things I want to make sure that I thank people, so that's part of why I have this up. So first thing I want to do is thank our wonderful esteemed colleague and leader, Sonia Savulian, who helped organize the panel today. I also want to thank a couple of our Price events organizers, Vana Kiros and Gia Acosta. So thank you and the team here for helping get us going and setting us up. And so with the thank yous, now I want to go ahead and turn things over and introduce our wonderful moderator today, who I was so excited to have. I know Allison Lynch as a member on our Lusk board, and I admire her. I don't think I've ever gotten a chance to say that. So Allison, I admire you so much in your career and your wonderful contributions to the real estate community and also to women in real estate. So thank you. And I think you guys will really enjoy bringing her into the USC fold. She's not a USC grad, so it's extra exciting, I think, to have her come and get a chance to interact with all of us and to begin to build those relationships even more strongly as we go forward. So a little bit about Allison. Of course, no exaggeration. She's a wonderful leader, has had an amazing career. She actually has just taken on, as of the new year, Chief Operating Officer role at Primestor Development. So continuing to expand and move her way through her real estate career. Prior to that, she was president of Watt Companies. And really played a pivotal role in building that business, helping them make some very important strategic decisions in that company, and continuing to strengthen that brand and that company for them. And she really came through that out of the asset management side of the world, working not just at Watt, but also working for several big companies, Burnham Pacific, CB Richard Ellis, MBK Northwest, and Terranomics. So Allison has had a really widespread career. She was a graduate of Mount St. Mary's University in Los Angeles, and she's also a regent for them as well. And she's an active member of the ULI, ICSC, and Commercial Real Estate Women crew, and was a past chair of the ULI Council here in Los Angeles. So I think I've covered a lot, probably more than she wanted me to, but I just want to give you a feel of what a powerhouse she is and how fortunate we are to have you here. So with that, I'm going to turn over things to Allison, let her introduce our panel, and get going with the discussion. So thank you.
All right, well, no one told me Mary Lynn was going to introduce me like that. I might have edited it down to a few less words. And just for clarity, because you do spend a lot of time with another former Watt person, I was president of Watt Properties. Nadine Watt, who many of you will meet in your SC career, was president of the larger company. Don't want to steal her thunder. And I always think I'm neutral because I went to Mount St. Mary's. There's a campus across the street from you here, and there's one in West LA by that other school we won't talk about. But I live with a Trojan, so I'm safe here. I'm really excited to be talking to a panel of women who have chosen real estate at the college level because it wasn't an option when I went to college, or I didn't even know it existed. And more particularly, I think you are an interesting group of graduates because many of them graduated in the middle of the pandemic and had the pandemic college experience, which will probably shape their career when they're sitting in my seat and we won't say in how long, sometime moderating a panel, their perspective on the industry will always be shaped by that. But I wanted to start today off. Normally we start with introductions, but we're going to do instead, we're going to do a rapid speed fire to get the energy going in the room. So I'm going to have you say your names and your firms, and then grab your paddles for your Q&A here for the speed questions, which I do have to read. Do you want to introduce your?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Emily Mondonedo. Thank you so much, Allison, and to the Price School for having me here today. I work for Link Logistics. I'm an associate on our West Coast Acquisitions and Development team based in Orange County. Link Logistics is Blackstone's industrial real estate platform. We are the largest U.S.-only industrial portfolio, and we're Blackstone's largest portfolio company as well. We have over 5 million square feet of high-quality industrial space in all key major markets across the U.S. So really excited to be here. I've attended this panel as a student and as an alumni, so it's really exciting to be here to celebrate Women's History Month and to celebrate all the success that women have made in the industry so far.
Hi guys, I'm Desirée, and it's amazing to look out on the crowd and just see a beautiful and diverse group of women. It's inspiring. I work in San Francisco at a firm called Divco West. We invest in a lot of office, multifamily, industrial, and I specifically work on asset management and acquisitions.
Hi everyone, I'm Juliana. I graduated from the BRED program in 2020. I work for a firm called Cain International. I'm an associate on their debt team, and we are asset class agnostic, so I touch kind of all asset classes from the lending side.
Hi everyone, my name is Makenna Peter. I was BRED class of 2021, and I work for JLL Capital Markets in our Orange County office. I'm exclusively focused on industrial investment sales in Southern California and touch everything from land to Class A buildings. And I'll just add on what everyone has said today. It is really great to be here, and I will say from the hiring standpoint, every year the applicants that we get in for interns and full-time hires just get stronger and stronger, and I'm excited every time I see a female that's coming out of the Price School apply, because I know that it's going to be a really strong applicant and a hopeful hire. So.
All right, do you have your paddles, and are you ready for your speed round?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, first question. Using ChatGPT or something similar at work, yes or no? Red is no. All right. Internship while you were an undergrad, yes or no? Ooh, 4. All right. Personally, do you prefer to work from home and your bosses aren't here so they won't know the answer? Preference. Ooh, all right. Are you in the office? We'll do this in like successive. We'll see what we get. 5 days a week?
Sometimes.
Ooh, well, then I don't have to go down the track.
Except for today.
Does your firm have a sustainability plan? Ooh, only one no there. We'll have to come back to that. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but I'm going to ask you, is your company hiring interns for summer 2024 just in general? Okay. Yes.
Hired.
Hired. That was a key point to that conversation. Do you have a female boss? Oh. Wow. Do you have female leadership in your firms? Do you use Argus, the software for valuation, in your role? So only one of you is using it every week. I don't like it either, so I would have put a no up. Okay, this is the SC question. Are you a fan of the Lab Gastropub, yes or no? All right, we got all yeses. Did your USC BRED education provide you with the valuable skills and knowledge that's contributing to your success? Everyone at SC likes seeing that one. All right, we can set those down. I won't make you ask any more yes/no questions. And I didn't tell the panelists the questions in advance. I kept it a secret. I thought maybe you could talk a little bit, and we'll start down there at the end and come back, is about your path. Like why did you pick real estate at SC and how it led you to choosing it at SC and then ultimately on into choosing it as a career?
To be honest, I got completely lucky applying to the BRED program here at SC. I was looking at the architecture school, and that was a 5-year program, and I was like, well, that's not going to quite work. So that was how it all started. And honestly, I think what led me to my ultimate path was just the conversations I had with people. And I tell this to, any college student that's trying to figure out what you want to do. The easiest thing is to figure out what you don't want to do, right? Because figuring out what you actually want to do is really tough. And, I would just have these conversations with people, and I would judge it based on how much did this person seem like they like their job, right? And that was the only kind of indication I was sort of getting that was pushing me towards where I ended up applying. And I had a lot of different internships in kind of different fields and took the aspects I liked and tried to find a role that would eventually work out. And it has so far, which is great.
I sort of always knew I wanted to go into real estate. My dad, who is here, John Hrovat, was developing projects in LA from when I was a very little kid. And I used to beg him to please come to his office. I thought it was the coolest place in the world. His office was in the Bradbury building downtown, which to this day is still one of my favorite buildings in the entire world. If you guys haven't been, you should definitely go explore it. But I was always exposed to it. I would beg him to go to his office. I thought printouts of foam core and development plans were like giant coloring books. I mean, to a 6-year-old, it was so exciting. There was a shiny shovel and a bunch of deal toys, and I was absolutely fascinated by it from a very young age. And despite both my mom and my dad encouraging me to try other paths and explore other avenues outside of real estate, I knew that was really what I wanted to do. And at the time, USC was one of the only schools that offered a program in real estate development. So it was a very easy decision to make. And bonus points, my sister was attending USC at the time, and my dad's a fellow alum. So it made the decision really easy. But I always knew I wanted to pursue a career in real estate. I just didn't know exactly where in real estate that would be. And I ended up on the debt side, and I'm very thrilled about it.
For me, it's a little different because whenever I started at USC, I was in Price, but as a public policy major. And I'm from small town Missouri. And whenever people told me they were studying real estate, I genuinely thought they were learning to flip homes because there's no buildings greater than couple thousand square feet in where I grew up. But then as I talked to more people and learned what people were learning, I felt that it was a good match for me because I really enjoy numbers and enjoyed my finance classes. And then when I got into the classes, that's really when I learned what you'll be doing professionally. And for me, it just clicked. It's the most tangible asset. That word is overused, but for me, it's really intuitive. You guys can guess why a certain retail store is really popular because of location and just a lot of factors that make sense to you. And then I stuck with it because of the people. Everybody I meet in real estate is just an amazing person, and it's all very connected, and you stay very close. So that's my journey.
It's awesome. Yeah, before joining the program at SC, I didn't have any real estate connection prior to it. I knew I had a lot of analytical skills and had a lot of interest in finance and business. And when I was looking to transfer into SC, I found this program. And as I started getting curious about the program, it's, you have exposure to public policy, to design and architecture, construction, so many different facets of the business that you can learn about. And that was really exciting to me. And then when I got into the program, the interpersonal relationship that you really have with everyone in this Trojan network kind of solidified that it was a great fit for me. And I think that's one of the best things that the program has to offer is that there's so many facets that you can explore in this program. There's so many different avenues that you can take. And I truly believe everyone in this program, there's a space for you in some sort of type of real estate industry. And it's really exciting to get to share our perspectives of that with you and hopefully, give some insight so you're able to discover which part of real estate you're interested in getting in.
And that's a really great lead into my next question. I'm going to ask each of you to talk about a project you're working on at work and a little of how a course here or courses people might consider influences your work. As well, we talked on our prep call about the skills you need, right? You take this theoretical stuff, but what are some of the skills that you're really leaning into on that project that either you learned at SC or you've developed as you've gone along? Do you mind going first?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do all of our West Coast acquisitions and development. So it's a really unique role that I'm getting to, be on the front side of it and finding new development opportunities that we can work on, and then being on the development execution side. So there's a lot of responsibilities that I cover on a day-to-day basis. And I think the great thing about the USC program and coursework that I, experienced was that, small picture, you get all the technical skills, you get those financial modeling that you're going to be using on a day-to-day basis, looking at financial models and financial returns for different investment opportunities. So you get all those technical skills, you learn about development and everything that goes into that. But I think what was super valuable about this specific program was the big picture, right? So development is a lot of different components into it. And so making sure you have the capacity to see the end goal and the big picture is something that the real estate program, I think, really excelled at in my experience. You do a lot of different case studies. A lot of the times the theoretical stuff, you may not, think, hey, how can I apply this today? But I promise you, those are the things that take away into kind of making your vision of the real estate industry really whole. And I think that comes from the faculty and professors that are in this program. These are people like Mary Lynne that are extremely successful in their own careers, and you're getting that experience one-on-one during your classes that is truly invaluable, and I think that's something that's really special about the program.
For me, just to back up, so I work on the investment side. I do a lot of asset management, so it's a lot of running scenarios on office buildings, and a lot of that requires Excel. And I think that the best class I took, well, I won't say the best because there were a million great classes, but Loper's class, RED 362, that man taught me if statements, and I still use if statements every single day. For example, if I hadn't taken Loper's class, then maybe I wouldn't have had success in the industry. But also more than just your technical skills, also thinking big picture, you have to be extremely creative in the industry right now. We're in a downturn and there's a lot of vacancy, so that highest and best use, what you've been learning in your classes, it really comes into play every single day. We have to ask ourselves, this building, would it actually be better as affordable housing, and what credits can we use? And that's where the public policy comes into play. And I'm literally looking online, doing the research to see what type of policies we can use, or just thinking really creatively, like, could this actually be a museum or something around that? So always thinking on your toes is a great skill as well.
Yeah, I think echoing what both of these women said before me, the technical skills I think are super important, and really being able to walk into your first job out of college and be able to build a multifamily performa or a development performa really sets you apart from all of your peers. I think a lot of schools don't offer programs like this, and you're learning the vocabulary. I work on a lot of construction loans, for example. So in any of these classes, I'm learning all of the vocabulary that's required to speak about real estate professionally and present deals to your investment committee. And I think that was so important on top of the understanding the policy and having those technical skills, modeling skills. Those were definitely some of the most helpful things in advancing my career is having that educational background, because it's so unique and not a lot of universities offer that.
So I'll share a deal that I'm working on right now, and I say this because I think previous to working on this deal, I had thought that a lot of maybe the urban planning, public policy courses I had taken were maybe a little bit less relevant to the more real estate finance route I took. But, so you're all under NDA. I'm currently trying to sell a 15-acre land site in Buena Park, and it's currently a corporate headquarters. And I was just talking to Sonia about it because we were talking about how challenging it is to develop industrial today in a lot of these cities where there's sensitive receptors nearby, right? So residential homes, because no one wants a warehouse next door, even though they do want their Amazon package on their front doorstep within an hour. That's a problem for another conversation. But I had to actually go sit with the city planner of Buena Park and, sit across the table and basically say, here is this site, right? Here is this corporate user that's going to be relocating. We will be taking this to market. We wanted to kind of get your pulse on what the city would ideally want here, right? And prior to this, I'd never had to go have one of these conversations. And I think that a lot of the classes we take at Price, while they may not feel relevant to the Argus models we're putting together, actually do prepare you for these conversations where, I wasn't surprised by, what sort of the priorities of the city were, right? And so we were teed up and ready to speak to those things, whether that be job creation or, lack of traffic congestion, right? And we drove the site before and we kind of knew what those pain points were going to be. So I share that in saying that, as much as putting your head down and understanding the technical aspect of the job is important, I do think a lot of what has allowed me to kind of progress in my career is the fact that I did get a very well-rounded perspective and view on the industry at Price. And so when deals would come across my plate, it wasn't just what's the IRR, it was more of, okay, I understand what's happening here. And, I have a classmate that does for sale homes and I'm going to call Anastasia and see what this site would be worth, in that regard, if I can't get an industrial developer to do it. So, I don't know that I totally understood the breadth of the program at the time, but I definitely do now and I'm grateful for it. So pay attention in all your classes, even the ones that maybe are a little less interesting to you.
I think you ended up kind of touching on the next question a little bit, but maybe you could expand on it. I'm going to ask you all to talk about a challenge your firm is facing. I mean, it's clear if you read the journal or pick up a newspaper, real estate is in choppy waters. Desirée will let her talk about office and why she's in that lane. But maybe you could talk a little bit more about how JLL is responding to the disruption. Maybe just clarify a little bit what's going on industrial, and then we can go through the challenges on the debt side of you wanting to charge us more for money.
Yeah. So I'll let Juliana talk more about interest rates than I will, as I only know enough to be really dangerous. But so I work in the intermediary space, right? So we are selling deals on behalf of clients to buyers, raising equity, right, on behalf of a client, or placing debt on behalf of a client. And what is really challenging in the intermediary space is any uncertainty, no matter what that looks like, right? And so, the fluctuation that we've seen in the market, both from an interest rate perspective and now on the industrial side, the pricing run up we saw, right, as a result of COVID, where, you had this huge backlog at the ports and everyone was ordering more online. And so there was a demand for space. And now that's kind of peeling back, has led to an immense uncertainty that makes it really tough for us to get our job done. I will say what helps is having data and research. And so for myself personally, I'm grateful to be at a firm that is at the forefront of putting a lot of that out. And we have built out research teams who have spent, the last 10 years just tracking data, and we can go point to that and, try to kind of project where we think things are going, right? Because as a buyer or an investor, you're buying an asset and you're looking at, what will this turn into, right? And so I would say that is our biggest challenge, is really the uncertainty piece. And it's never easy, but trying to kind of wrap your head around what is happening and where you think the puck is headed is the only way to kind of navigate and weather the storm right now.
I would agree with a lot of what Makenna said. I think uncertainty in the market is the biggest challenge facing our firm right now. I'm very lucky our portfolio at Cain on the debt side, we don't have legacy Class B office in our portfolio that we have to asset manage, but I certainly was dealing with a lot of that at my previous firm, Mac Real Estate Group, on their debt side. There's a lot of, in the lending space, a lot of these lenders are typically dealing with workouts on these office loans or non-performing loans that were struggling during COVID and things of that nature. But the uncertainty in the market is really the piece that we're trying to work through and understand. And I think the way we're dealing with that is having intelligent conversations and sitting down for 2 or 3 hours at work and saying, we're going to sit down and really think critically about what's going to happen if this happens with the election, and if the Fed raises rates, are they not going to raise rates? And so we're thinking really critically about that. But at the end of the day, we're really focused on quality real estate, quality sponsorship, quality investment opportunities, and thinking critically about those regardless of what happens in this uncertain macroeconomic environment. Will this deal still be okay? And then from the debt side, I think you have an opportunity to focus on structuring according to you're structuring your loan docs. in a downside scenario, what if this happens, what if that happens, and you really have the ability to hopefully structure and protect yourself in a downside scenario.
Yeah, as far as challenges go, I work in office, so frankly, it's a challenge every day. But I was saying to these tall ladies earlier that there is no better place to learn, especially at the beginning of your career, than an office during a downside. And I will say that when the market is booming and everything is good, it's very easy to be a winner, but in these downturns, you have to be extremely smart and creative to still be successful. So I think some ways we've worked through those challenges, particularly with lenders, is, those DSCR calcs you're doing, we do those every single week, and it's a lot of staying in compliance with the lenders and constantly communicating, maybe over communicating about the state of the market, and then also working with the lenders as partners to really work through a structure that is beneficial to both the lender and the borrower. And then I touched on this earlier today, but leasing, you have to really think outside the box, and reading the news, it will show you what is the demand. For instance, AI, like would this building, it used to be leased to a tech tenant, but now is it better as an AI think tank? And then you got to run out and call all those AI tenants. So it's a hustle, but it's a great learning experience.
Yeah, I think on the investment side, as the other two mentioned, interest rate volatility is something that is creating a really challenging market. I think the price dislocation between buyers and sellers is something we're navigating every single day. Where are land values? How do we look at rent growth for the next 6, 12, 24 months is something that we're constantly evolving. I think at my company, our investment strategy has been extremely disciplined over the last few years. We definitely focus on highly infill strategic locations with high barriers to entry, places that really have steady demand, really great supply-demand dynamics. And I think the bright side of the challenges that we're focusing on are very steady. Those are, really strong underlying fundamentals we're seeing in the market still, which make future investment opportunities really exciting. And we also try to leverage our local market expertise in our market here in SoCal, and having great relationships with Makenna and at JLL, and having, our relationships are really what helps us find these compelling investment opportunities. I'd say kind of on the flip side of that, on our operations standpoint, is how do we continue driving value for our customers? How do we continue being innovative with making our business more efficient? Whether that's being, we created a digital platform for our customers to have a better, efficient operations and communication with our different property managers, and also on the sustainability side, what is our carbon neutral initiatives that we're focusing on? How can we continue to encourage renewable energy solutions is something that, are also challenges that are really important to us, and making sure that we're continuing to offer our customers a space to grow their businesses is something that we focus on constantly.
I might get some advice from them all afterwards on this tech stuff. You talked a lot about relationships. You've all mentioned it in a different capacity, who you're picking the phone up to talk to. I wanted to talk to you all about, some of you are involved in the Trojan Real Estate Association mission, maybe you all were. How is that transition as you've moved into the professional world? How have you looked at ULI, NAIOP, whichever's applicable to your area, and maybe explain to the students what that transition from doing it here as a student to moving into that, what does that look like? How have you been successful? I'll let any of you, whoever would like to take that, to start, and then we can hop around.
Sure. I'm super involved in NAIOP and ULI and CREW as well. And a lot of these organizations just are a continuation of the organizations that you're a part of now, whether that's TREE or MREFA. Those are really where you're going to learn to build those relationships. The USC network is so huge. And I think adding real estate on top of that is just another layer that, everyone reminds you of that, and everyone talks about how important relationships are. But really, you don't get that understanding until you're graduated and you see that you run into people that you were in classes with every day. So I would say, in your classes, make sure you know everyone that you sit by, everyone in the class, because you will be working with them constantly after. TRIA was really formative to me, and to being able to be a part of the executive board was a really valuable experience. As someone who is highly, highly introverted, my goal for every TRIA meeting was just, you may want to leave right after, but just stay, introduce yourself to one of the professionals that were on the board, and I promise you those connections will be so important moving forward. A little just side story is someone that I connected on the TRIA board. She was amazing, and I just kept that relationship, over the next few years. She just called me one day, offered me a job at her new company she was starting at, and I didn't end up taking that job, but just knowing that those relationships can be really fruitful and beneficial. That carries on to, NAOP and ULI and crew and stuff that you do afterwards is super valuable to have that. And it makes it really exciting. It's really fun to go to an event and see, people that you see constantly from your classes. It makes it a really fun part of your job. So I would say that.
Yeah, so I'm based in San Francisco, and if any of you end up moving there for your career after, please reach out. I'd love to talk. But there is one club that is specific to San Francisco called the Belden Club, and it's a lot of young people who do happy hours, and it's an amazing group to connect. And the more authentic those connections are, the better off you'll be in your career. But just to echo what Emily said, I cannot tell you the amount of times that I see an email and I go, oh my gosh, that person's from USC, and I had a class with them and I remember them. So definitely, bring that air of professionalism to your classes, to your group projects, because you will be running into those same people again. And the more you network, the more success you're going to have in your career, because especially as you end up becoming a producer and bringing in deals, it's those connections that are going to bring in those deals. So stick with it.
Absolutely. I think that's so important, is sticking with those relationships that you formed from USC. I also don't live in Los Angeles or Southern California. I'm based in New York, so there's not a ton of Trojans out there. The USC network is growing, thankfully, and the real estate USC network is small, but again, growing, which is always awesome to see. I'm involved in one group that I think is particularly important to mention. I'm involved in a group called Girl Gang, and it is a group designed for women in real estate. They host panels and networking events, and I think it's so important to find opportunities to network, but even more importantly, opportunities to network with women in the industry and find those women that support you, and really build that strong connection. At the end of the day, it's almost like you're networking with a smaller group of people, because not every company has a woman that is representing them and showing up to these networking events. So by showing up and putting your name out there and representing your company and showing up to these networking events, you might be getting opportunities that, I might win a deal on the lending side because I was there and I spoke to a broker like Makenna, but my competing firm, who has a investment team full of males, isn't attending the same event. I might win that deal just because I was at this event. So I think those opportunities are really important, and finding a woman-specific networking group is one of the best things that you can do as a young woman in real estate.
Or make your own if one doesn't exist.
That too.
Yeah. I'll opine a little bit. I will also say, I don't want to repeat too much, but it's one thing to attend a lot of these events. Take a leadership role. And I know when I first started, I didn't think that was an option because I was so young and so early on in my career. You would be surprised. Everyone will always take help, volunteer to plan an event for ULI or assist with sign-in or setup or something, especially if you're shy and, the idea of showing up to a 200-person NAOP event is very intimidating. The minute you get involved and you start to meet the people that are running the organization, the easier it becomes and your network just starts to grow and multiply. So do not be afraid to raise your hand. And I would say, commit to one organization and fully buy in and, get involved in a leadership role.
I think you're dead on the leadership role opportunity because you get seen by people at different levels in organizations that in a way that you would not be seen if your resume came across my desk. And I will share with you all that my job that I have today is based on my role at ULI. When I was district council chair, I called Leandro Teiberg, one of the co-founders of Primestor, and I really wanted his voice on the board. And I said, it'll be easy. You just have to come to one meeting a month. And he's a senior level busy executive in development. And he committed, and we got to interact in a different way, even though we'd known each other for a long time. But at my point in my career, that relationship is still it provided this new role for me. So it builds as you go through your career. And I think if you do raise your hand, you have to deliver on what you said you were going to do. So be really clear because you're going to be observed whether you intend to be or not. I think in that conversation, I love this girl gang. I saw Mary Lynne write it down. When we were prepping for the call, you were talking about some of the statistics about women, and we saw that a little bit in your panel flips. Some of you have women, I think only one of you has a woman boss, and women in leadership. Can you talk a little bit about where JLL is on those numbers, and then maybe each of you can talk about how you see being a woman in the industry and what's happening in your firms, if you're comfortable sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is not to throw JLL under the bus. We are actively trying to add women, and I will say they've done a really great job about doing so. But at the production level, right? So anything above an analyst or an associate across the nation, we just had our big producer conference, and of 650 producers, 54 of those are women. And I remember when I was an intern and I was, looking at the conference table and realizing that there was no women sitting at the table, I was kind of like, oh, is this not a job for women? Or what's the deal here? And I kind of made a commitment to myself of I want to sit at that table, right? And Avery, you see it. Avery interned with us last summer. And I will say that the reassuring fact is, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but now if you were to look at it from an analyst level, those numbers are drastically different, right? And it's all about, growing people from the ground up. And so that's why I say it's so great to look out and see so many young women. But I will add that I do think, and even when I sat in these chairs, I don't know that I ever thought I was going to go the real estate finance route and be sitting in Argus all day. I always was okay at math, but I never thought that was my strong subject. And I wish someone, when I was a freshman, sophomore, would have just shook me and been like, if you can add, subtract, multiply, and divide, you can underwrite commercial real estate deals, because that is the reality. And luckily at some point, down the road, I figured that out and kind of applied on a whim, and the rest was history. But I do think it's changing, but it is, it's wild to kind of look up and not have a female leader in your office or in your company. And so it's important to find people sort of in other organizations. And I'll say for Southern California, we have a group, it's called the Sisterhood of the Tilt Up. It's a group of women in Southern California industrial real estate on either the acquisition side or the brokerage role. And our group started as a dinner reservation that was a standing reservation every week. And I think there was about 6 women in the group. We now have an email list of 60. So those numbers are multiplying at a really impressive rate. But a lot of those women that are in that organization that are a little further in their career than I am are people that I consider mentors that I call when, I have a tough work decision and I need some advice on, hey, how should I handle this? So super important to find that for yourself.
And I think the other piece of advice about being a woman in the industry that you shared on the call was about asking for what you want.
Yeah. And so I'll share a really quick anecdote, but I was talking to an analyst in our San Francisco office in January, and she came to me and she said, Makenna, I'm really bummed because I didn't get the associate promotion that I'd hoped for. And another one of my male analyst counterparts did get the promotion. And when I went to our office head and I kind of asked, hey, we're the same tenure, what did he do that I didn't do? The response was, well, he asked. And she called me and she was just like, that doesn't feel right. I didn't know I had to ask for a promotion. I thought, someone would come tap me and say, hey, great job, congratulations, this is awesome. And so she called and she just had this bad taste in her mouth. And she's just like, I don't want to have to ask. I don't like this. And her and I kind of talked for a while, and the kind of joke we came up with was, I was like, well, what happened the last time you went to a restaurant? I was like, did the waiter just like bring the entree you wanted, or did you have to ask for it? She was like, well, I asked for it. And I was like, okay, here's the way to look at it, right? There's a difference between asking and telling someone what your goals are. And I kind of look back, I made some pivots in my career from a product type standpoint and ended up on a different team. And I think a big piece of me being able to do that was one, that I did have good leadership, but I think it was because I made sure that leadership knew what I wanted. And I was probably a little annoying about it, right? Like I would go in and say, hey, like, here is my goal. Or I really want to work on a deal. I really want to work on an equity placement deal because I haven't done much of that. And that's something I want to learn. And that would just be my takeaway for all of you. If you take anything I say away, is make sure you tell people what your goals are, because the mentors and leaders in your life are most likely too busy to constantly be thinking about, hey, what does Emily need? And how can I make sure that I help Emily today, right? But if Emily goes up to her boss and says, hey, here's what I need from you, or here's what I would like to learn, or here's my goal, it's a great chance that that's now top of mind. And next time they're walking down the hall and there's a meeting Emily could come to, he may tap Emily and say, hey, come with me. This would be great for you. So that would be my piece is, have your own goals, but make sure you tell everyone around you, your leaders, anyone that will listen, what they are.
You talked about the girl gang, Juliana, but any other, in your organization, how are you navigating being a woman, and what's maybe your ratio, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, I think I am very lucky to be at a firm that has so many women in a position of leadership. We have a female CFO, one of our internal counsel that's in a leadership role, she's female. We have so many women in my firm at all levels, leadership, analyst, associate, VP, all over. And I think within my firm, I feel so lucky to have such a supportive environment of women. I will say, however, that's not always the case. Unfortunately, not all women want to support other women. And I think it's really important, especially in organizations like Girl Gang, that you find women that are that want to support you and want to support other women, because some women take the elevator up and they don't send it back down for you. And that's unfortunate, but there are plenty of women in the industry that want to support you and want to see you succeed. So it's about finding that. And I feel very lucky that I am in a place that there's plenty of women that want to support me and want me to have a voice and want to see that growth. But even outside of your firm, you can find that, because you're not always going to be as lucky as maybe I am to be in a position where there are so many women of leadership at my company.
How about you, Desirée?
We're growing as far as the women base goes. I have a handful of colleagues that are peers that are women, and then our chief fundraising officer, our general counsel, also women and moms, so they really hustle. But I would just say that being a woman is a superpower. All the women I've ever worked with have been the most detailed, organized, on top of it people. I've never worked with a woman that just wasn't it. We're all it. I also have to say that I think that being a woman, we have a certain eye for marketing and design that maybe our male counterparts don't, and that's a really unique voice. And especially if you're the only woman at the table or in the elevator. I went on a tour yesterday, I was the only woman there, but I noticed things that maybe some other people had missed just because of my background and experience, and maybe I view the world a little bit differently. And having that unique voice is something that adds value to companies. So just remember, you've got the unique it thing.
That's awesome. And at my company, I'm super fortunate to be at a company that definitely encourages women to have leadership roles as well. At Link, we have this program called Ascend, which has, builds camaraderie around the women at Link. And really what that does is give women an opportunity to ask each other questions. How can I earn a promotion? How can I continue to build my career within the company? And I think it's really important, whatever company that you're looking for, is to make sure there's that support there. Whatever industry you're going in, is to make sure that it's a company that supports that you're going to be under a manager that wants to see you succeed and wants to give you, opportunities to become become a leader. I think that's really important. And for yourself personally, just show up for yourself every day. Take yourself seriously, because if you don't show up and take yourself seriously, then no one else is going to either. So I think that's something that you need to remind yourself as well. And also, you're never too young or too early to make a difference for other women in the industry as well. I have another analyst that I work with, and her boss wanted her to get involved in ULI, and I knew that I had a connection from TRIA that is now involved on their leadership board. And so I scheduled a lunch for us to get together, and something that took an hour out of my day could really make a difference in my coworkers' future career path. So never underestimate the impact that you can make. You're never too young, never have little experience. You can always make a difference. So I would just remind yourself that every day when you show up for yourself.
Awesome. I will share a tip that I think everyone can use. This is some research out of a group out of Boston. So women, successful women and men, when they're judged, women are generally viewed as better at leading teams in this study that's been going on for like 20 years. And doing the job, execution, men and women are equal. The big delta between men and women they found in this study is that women don't talk about their numbers. And I heard this study when I was much later in my career. I always knew my numbers, but I didn't talk about them. So when you get on that elevator with some executive who's further up the chain, don't ask them about the baseball game, or, well, maybe if they're a Trojan, ask them about football. But talk to them in numbers about what you're working on. Like, what's your volume? What are you working on? Quantify it for them, because people further up the chain have limited time. And as you're early in your career, start cataloging your numbers. How many deals have you looked at? Those kinds of things I think are critical. And I'm going to turn it to Desirée and Juliana, because you pivoted in your careers. You're not at the firms you left college and joined, and maybe talking about what that journey looked like for you.
Yeah, maybe this is a little too real of an analogy, but I honestly think that working is almost like dating, and you may not marry the first person you date, but you might get really valuable experience and insight from that person. And it's the same with your first job. Like, maybe you fall in love with that job and you fall in love with that team, or maybe that's something that you pack into your experience case and move forward. My first job was in brokerage, and it was the best place for me to start out because I got reps. Every single week I was underwriting new deals. They were new asset classes, they were new deal structures, and I don't think I would have gotten that amount of reps in development or even my firm where I work at currently. So that was an amazing experience and the best place for me to start. For me, I didn't really see myself growing as a salesperson, and that's a bit what brokerage is. You really are, selling the deals, you're bringing in clients, and I'm more of an analytical person, if I'm being honest with myself. So I found myself on the investment side, and it just fits me a lot more. I am a little bit of a slower thinker, and I love that the assets I work on, I'm gonna be working on those assets cradle to grave, meaning from the time we buy to the time we sell. And as I was kind of mentioning earlier with marketing and design, I also like being a little bit closer to the asset and having a more direct influence on the outcome of the asset, as far as maybe like what type of lobby renovation we do or what amenities really mean the most to tenants. So I feel like I have a bigger impact on what I'm working on, but that's just me personally, and you can't go wrong.
So how did you find the opportunity?
So this is a good plug for ULI, because I went to a Women in Real Estate ULI conference, and they had a resume book when I was a student. And I put my USC resume in there, and there was another Trojan up in San Francisco in the Eastal office, and they saw the resume, and that's how I got the opportunity. I didn't even apply to the company because, to be honest, I didn't even know if I was confident enough to apply for that. So I'm really grateful that my resume was found in the book and I got that opportunity. Same with the internship that I had. I actually was doing a project in the history class that we took, and I was assigned a building in downtown LA that was owned by a group called Rising Realty. And I did a whole presentation with financial metrics and a tenancy plan, and I actually met with the asset manager on that project, and I showed him my presentation, and he hired me as an intern. So, and also a fellow Trojan. So it was through that network and through that class that I got my internship. As far as where I'm at now, Divco was one of the clients I worked with at my first job in brokerage in the intermediary role. And I really enjoyed the team members, and I just thought that they were really smart investors. And gee, if I ever left brokerage, that's where I'd want to be. And one of the connections, another woman in real estate, Elena Miller, she called me up one day and she said, "Hey, are you looking for jobs?" And that's when I took that dive that time. So, I think I've landed in the right place, but it's all through connections, really.
Yeah, my story is a little bit different. I started my career at Mac Real Estate Group out of college. Thank you, Sonia, for encouraging me to apply to an internship in New York, even though my mom's not happy about it. I ended up staying there. I kind of fell in love with New York. I'll come back eventually. But I started a career, and I was really dead set on I want to do development in Southern California. You can ask Sonia, she will say, absolutely, that is exactly what I wanted to do, and I was stubborn, and I didn't want to do anything else. Thank you to Sonia for encouraging me to go apply to this internship. I spent half my time at the internship in development and half the time in debt. I ended up getting placed on the debt team in the New York office against exactly what I thought I wanted to do. But I accepted the position because I thought it was a great opportunity, and debt was a great space to kind of like Desirée said, get in those reps and look at a bunch of deals and underwrite a ton of deals and get exposure to all those different asset classes. I spent about 2.5 years there. I ultimately decided that culturally wasn't really a fit for me. And when looking for new opportunities, it was definitely challenging. At the beginning of the year, I will say real estate is pretty cyclical. So there's a lot more opportunities towards when you're looking to transition to a different position. A lot of those opportunities are in the first quarter of the year, which is when I started my process. I found my current position through a recruiter who had reached out to me via LinkedIn. I'm sure all of you get plenty of LinkedIn messages. Hey, are you interested in this? Hey, are you interested in that? And it's easy to just ignore those. I went back to a recruiter message that I had got probably 6 months earlier, and I said, hi, I'm interested in looking at other positions. Do you have anything? So started off working with a recruiter, and that process was so interesting. There were so many opportunities that came through the recruiter instead of just, mindlessly scrolling on LinkedIn. And as soon as I had my first interview, they were like, you did great. Now here's another opportunity and another opportunity. And do you want to interview here and here and here and here? And it was kind of once you got your foot in the door, and once I had that relationship established with the recruiter, had proved myself as, I'm capable and I have the right experience. I ended up getting 2 offers and ultimately decided on the one where I felt it would be the most supportive and best growth environment for me. I think part of that was because there were so many women in leadership at my current firm, made the decision pretty easy, but it's a little taste of my journey, and I'm still in New York.
Much to your mother's chagrin. I can tell from the look what Sonia got. You guys have all talked about how great your education here at SC was. I guess the question is, are you considering graduate school, professional development, or are you sailing through and you're done and never going to open a textbook again? So maybe you could talk about whether you're considering that today or looking forward to it ahead.
I would definitely consider pursuing higher education in the future, especially knowing what kind of program is offered here in the MRED. A lot of my senior leaders at my company are MRED graduates, and so just seeing the success that they have, the network that they have, the relationships that they have because of that program is super valuable, and so it's definitely something that I would consider doing in the future.
For me, it's a little different. I honestly feel like my BRED program really prepped me for my career, and I've gotten deal experience, and that also has, led to some growth in my career. But I will say that, there's different life stages, and maybe one day it will fit that life stage. Maybe I'll want to pivot to a different asset class or a different type of firm, and that's what makes sense for me to really get those skills to pivot. So maybe my answer will change, but for now I feel like BRED really prepped me.
I would agree with that. I think a lot of the things that you're learning here at USC really prepare you for your first job out of college in real estate or related field. And I think I would really consider graduate school or higher education if I wanted to pivot to a different point in the industry. But I think you learn so much on the job every single day. You're learning so much, and getting that hands-on learning experience, especially as a young person, that experience and educational experience learning on the job is so valuable for me currently, and I'm learning so much. I would hate to walk away from it at this moment, but eventually, yeah, maybe that would be something I would consider, especially if I wanted to pivot roles within the industry.
Yeah, I would echo those sentiments. I will not be getting my master's, not because I don't like school, but I think you do just learn a lot on the job. And I think unless you want to make a career pivot, there is so much that you can learn on live deals that can be a lot more fun. What I will say is that, when I graduated, I kind of looked at my analyst time at JLL as my master's program. And so when I was considering jobs, I know I was looking at a couple offers, and one was a much higher salary than what JLL was offering. And I ended up taking the JLL job because I was very focused on, A, you got to be able to pay your bills, right? But B, I was, where am I going to learn the most and where am I going to get reps, right? And how can I look at my first year to 2 years out of school as sort of my master's degree that I'm getting paid to get, right? And where is that learning going to be the most exponential and all that? So that's how I looked at it. I'll say on the brokerage side, it's a little bit unique. And one of the reasons I like it is it's not really based on what your degree is. No one cares where you went to school. If you're sourcing business and, being successful, it's celebrated and you get promoted. But I do think that it does differ. And sometimes on the investment sides, right, to have certain, managing director roles, a lot of those individuals, like you said, Emily, do have MRED degrees. So I think it totally depends on your situation. But I think for a lot of you right now, focusing on where you're going to learn the most your first 2 years out of the BRED program is really important and imperative, and even more so than, what salary is the highest of my opportunities.
I think I'm going to ask my last question, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. If you were to look back, is there something you would have done differently when you were a recent grad that you would suggest the students consider not doing when you're leaving? I think you may have given the answer to taking the lower salary for the opportunity is what you did right. But any other words of advice, especially because they are looking at entering the industry at a choppy water time? Any would have done differently?
I would say my experience was a little bit different because I transferred into the program, so my time was a little bit limited. But I would say try as many different types of internships that you can while you're in undergrad. Echoing kind of what was said prior is, finding out what you don't like to do is equally as important as finding out what you should be doing. And so getting that exposure to different facets of real estate will ultimately help you find your end goal and will benefit you with those insights. I think another thing I would have loved to have done is study abroad. I think it's great to get that experience. I did have a course I was supposed to go to Mexico that was canceled because of the pandemic, but all of these opportunities that USC offers, definitely tried to do them as much as possible.
What I would have done differently is actually right after graduation. For me, my first couple years in my career, I was so focused on work, and I put 100% of my energy into that, which is great, and that's what you should do when you start out. But I actually think I was so focused on work, maybe I let some of my USC, TRIA, et cetera, connections slide a little, and I called them a little less. And now that I'm a couple years out of that and I have a little bit more time, I've really focused on picking up the phone again and reestablishing those connections and meeting in person, meeting for coffees, and taking the time to do that, because as we've all learned today, that's so important. So it's good to slow down and focus on your networking too. Don't just, the work will be there. It's always going to be there. And the best advice I've ever been given is we're not saving lives. We're not doctors. nothing's going to die, so it'll be there.
I agree with that, Desiree. I think that, it'll be there. It's important to build those relationships. And I think my first 2 years out of college, I was very, very focused on the work. And I wish I could go back and tell myself, take your vacation days. And I also wish I could go back and tell my undergrad self, take real estate law. I know it's a very specific thing, but I wish I would have taken it. I don't think you realize, maybe it's because I'm on the debt side, but I am reading legal documents day in and day out, page to page, and I really, I've had so many, thankfully, incredible women lawyers, kind of by coincidence, willing to sit down with me and walk me through a loan document or walk me through some kind of legal concept that I might not understand, but I wish I would have taken advantage of that course here and taken my vacation.
I would say make sure you understand everything in all of your classes. And Marilyn, I think there was probably a couple pro formas in your class that I did that I kind of understood, but not totally sure if I had it right. And then all of a sudden I get to JLL, I'm like, oh, there's that pro forma again. Now I'm gonna actually have to learn this. So, take the time to ask questions, especially when you have, professors and TAs and classmates that want to help, because the first year of your career, that is the opportunity to ask the questions, but then you get to the point where you're like, okay, I have to know this, right? So definitely do that. And on that note, take your student card that you have right now and call as many people as you possibly can that are in the business, that are maybe doing something you want to do or something you don't think you want to do. I can't now pick up the phone and call someone without them thinking that I want to sell them a deal. Right? They're kind of like, okay, what do you want? When are you going to get to the kicker, right? So do that. And especially right now where it's tough to find a job. I get it. We're not hiring as many interns and analysts as we normally are. And so the way that you are going to find jobs is through connections and through people you know. And I hate to be blunt when I say this, but every resume starts to look the same. You've all taken, relevant coursework, you have phenomenal GPAs, you have, 3 or 4 internships. I mean, it's the resumes we get now, we are just how do these students even have the time? What is going to set you apart is, you sent an email to someone at the company and they talked to you for 30 minutes, even if it was 6 months ago, and they recognize your name, right? Or continuing to stay and follow up with them, because what happens is, as soon as the floodgates open and we get told, hey, we can hire again, I know, who are those SC students that have called me and have continued to follow up and tell me what classes they're taking and what they're liking. And those are the first names that come to my mind. And hopefully I'm sending an email to say, hey, good news, we have a spot open, right? And you're getting that phone call before you're seeing the LinkedIn post. So if you're doing anything right now, spend your time doing that. I reflect back on every internship and job I ever had, and every single one was a referral from someone I know. It was never the cold resume applications that I sent in that actually yielded jobs for me.
Awesome. Well, I think we're going to take some questions from your fellow soon-to-be alumni. So if you'd raise your hand, we have a mic, and if you could just tell us what year you are and introduce yourself. Sure.
Hi, I'm Molly and I'm a sophomore. My question is, what is your advice for your first internship in real estate? Because that's what I'm heading into this summer and I'm excited about it, but I'm still a little bit nervous.
I have very specific advice.
Go for it.
This is homework, so only voluntary, but there are courses online called Break into CRE, and it's video recordings and you make Excel models, and I think that will really help you brush up on your Excel skills before you go into the internship, so you can really know how to do some more advanced Excel formulas, and also just ask a ton of questions. What I used to do whenever I was an intern and an analyst is I would compile my questions throughout the day so I wasn't bugging my manager 24/7, and towards the end of the day we would go through that list. Sometimes it was quite long because I didn't know what I was doing, but don't be afraid to ask questions.
And just adding on to that, something that we look for in our interns and new hires is that a lot of things in life are out of your control, and it's okay to recognize that, but there are 2 things that are always in your control, and one of them is your effort, And that means coming in, putting in 100% effort every single time, coming in early, staying late, asking questions, taking initiative to want to work on different opportunities, I think is really makes someone stand out. And then the second thing is just your attitude. Be happy when you come into the office. Be excited to get to know your coworkers. I think it's such a simple formula, but you would be surprised how far those two things make someone stand out. When you're going into these internships, you're not expected to know everything. You're not expected to have all of the answers. But I think if you control those two things, that you have effort and attitude, people will really want to continue working with you.
And I'll just add, be confident. I remember when I first started my career, even my first year at JLL, I think I spent the whole year being like, oh, wow, like, I don't know what I'm doing. And like, all these guys seem to really know what they're doing, right? And what I came to realize was I did know what I was doing. And I was probably at the exact same level, if not even a little higher than some of my male counterparts. But they were faking it till they made it, right? And they came in confident every day. And so people thought they knew more than they did. And they were getting, the more complex deals. And they were getting the stuff because they were kind of selling the moon, right? And so it's not to say that, you don't lie and say that you know how to do something you don't, but have the confidence to take it on and then ask questions, right? And work through it. Google is your best friend, especially as an intern, but take the initiative and have the confidence. And it's hard in the beginning, but fake it till you make it, convince yourself to do that because it will come. And if you're not doing it, the other interns are, and those are the ones that do start to stand out.
Yeah, I think adding on to what Makenna said, and especially comparing yourself to your male counterparts, I think it's so important to be true to yourself and understand that, you are maybe a little bit different because you are a woman, but that adds value and that brings value to the table. And I think one of the best things that I did in my internship summer was I was a cohort of probably 6 interns. 2 of us got return offers. And I think the one thing that really set me apart was being able to take on sort of a leadership role within my intern class and take, the initiative to say, hey, we're all working on this. Can you schedule a time to do this? Even the small things. And then the other thing that I would add would be show your passion. If real estate is really what you're passionate about, being passionate about the field, we interview so many candidates who are coming from investment banking or here or there. And really the thing that sets them all apart or the exceptional candidates apart is what is their story and what is their connection to real estate and why are they interested in real estate, or is real estate just, a pit stop in their career because they got tired of the investment banking world. So I would say own your passion, take on leadership roles, and really, as Makenna said, be confident because, everyone else might be faking it until they make it. So why shouldn't you? But own your own perspective as a female in the industry.
One other thing I'll add is print out the org chart on your first day and commit to meeting with every single person one-on-one in your office, no matter what their position is or their role. I think you'd be surprised what will come of that and the work and the assignments that someone will then give you or the knowledge they'll impart. And then, when it comes for full time, right, every person in the office can say, I met with Juliana and, she was great, right? Or I did meet her. What you don't want is someone to say, oh, I don't know, I never talked to her all summer, right? So literally print that org chart out and cross them off once you've had a 15-minute meeting.
And along those lines, it's meeting everyone in the office when you come, because you never know who's going to walk by and ask the receptionist or someone working, if you still have a mailroom, but someone in the organization, someone in the marketing department. Did you meet the summer interns? What did you think? Yeah. And you could have had a wrong experience with the receptionist or the marketing manager, and that may hurt you down the road because you're so focused on the commercial real estate aspect of it. So I think the org chart's a great suggestion.
Hi, my name's Olivia. I'm also a sophomore. Just want to say thank you guys for being here. That was super insightful. My question's more if you could just kind of talk about the timeline, more of when did you acquire your your rising senior year internship? When did you acquire your after college job? At what point should you be doing that?
I can start. Just go for it.
I applied for my junior internship, I think probably fall semester, halfway through the year, because on the real estate finance side, a lot of that recruiting process real estate firms are trying to keep up with investment banking, and investment banking recruits so early. But I will say, like, that's not standard practice, and I don't think there's like a set real estate hires at this time or that time. Sonia would probably know a lot better than me. But that's when I applied to my internship. I did my internship. I received a return offer, I think the day I was moving into my senior year apartment here. Had to decide about a week later. And I stayed at that company for about 2.5 years. And my recruiting process to transition to Cain, that was probably about a month long, but that's kind of my journey and how that happened. But I don't think anyone's timeline is identical, and everyone's is kind of different. So don't put pressure on yourself if you haven't found an internship for this summer yet. I think my sophomore to junior year, school had ended. I had taken my last final, and Makenna said relationships are so important. I was at dinner with my family in Pasadena, and I ran into a friend at USC who now works with, and he asked me, "What are you doing this summer?" And I said, "I don't know, I haven't figured it out yet." And he said, "Well, I know Cushman & Wakefield is hiring an intern for their team, and it's building those connections." And he made the intro for me and really helped me get my foot in the door. So I don't think any timeline is perfect or correct, but that's just my opinion.
Only thing I'll add is I know you said you were a sophomore, so a lot of job postings probably say you have to be a junior. Apply anyways, right? Those are just suggestions. Avery's a good example. We hired her as a sophomore. But I do think that it is tougher your sophomore year because a lot of these companies, especially on the real estate finance side, want you to have one previous internship. I think that USC is unique, and I think our program's unique. And so what I always tell SC students is, especially if who you're talking to is not an SC grad that didn't go through our program, make sure they understand what classes you're taking and how a lot of the classes you are taking are very similar to maybe an internship that a junior from another school would have had that previous summer. Because I do think that a lot of the sophomores that come out of SC are much more prepared than the junior candidates we see from other universities. So do not be afraid to apply to positions that say you must be older than a sophomore, and do not be afraid to bring up some of the classes you are taking in that kind of informational interview that you're having.
My experience was a little bit different because I did switch majors at the beginning of my junior year. So I had finance internships my sophomore year, but I didn't have a real estate internship, and I just knew like I have to have one going into my senior year. And it was through TRIA and asking people out to coffee that I did eventually land that internship, but I didn't land it until spring of my junior year. So there are a lot of smaller real estate operating companies in the city that don't function at all like investment banks, and they're completely unaware of that timeline, that are still hiring in the spring. So just keep your eyes out. There's great resources through the career services, and a lot of Trojans will post those jobs on those platforms. So just keep your eyes open, and it's never too late.
Similar to what others said, I recruited in fall for my summer internship. I think just like Juju said, like it's not standard that happens all the time. We've had tremendous success hiring in spring. And I think real estate hires on an as-need basis a lot of the time. So if you don't have one by fall, don't get discouraged. Keep looking for those opportunities. And I would say for my summer internship, at the end, they prefaced that, there wasn't a full-time opportunity at the end of my internship, and they just wanted me to be aware of that. But I said, hey, I have the opportunity to extend my internship through the fall semester. I love the company. If there's an opportunity to do that, would you consider it? And so they did extend my internship through the fall. So by the end of fall, there was that full-time opportunity because they just started a new development group on the team. So, even if something doesn't look like it's going anywhere, just continue with it. If it's something that you really want to pursue, the opportunities come as an as-need basis. So never get discouraged if you're not on someone else's timeline.
Well, will you all join me in thanking this great panel for their time and all their sage advice. It was a pleasure to be here with you all, ladies, and look forward to continuing the relationships. Thank you all.
Thank you.